Right, we're going to talk a little bit about setting the draw length on compound. First of all, we've got to get rid of some of the myths, and before we look at it in exact sort of draw length, let's look at how the axle to axle affects the anchor point and the draw position. This is a short axle to axle, this is 33. So you notice that the string angle is very steep, and so with a normal anchor point here, if I leave my head up in the air, it's going to sit there. Now, just to compare that with what I would call a mid axle to axle boat, 38. So we're going to anchor in the same place, and that string's a great deal closer to the nose. We're going to see this also a little bit with the recurves. The reason that I start there is that the anchor point, the position where this hand's going to sit, is immutable. It is not driven by the axle to axle length on the bow. You may speak to archers, good archers, who talk about that they can't shoot various lengths of axle to axle because they're uncomfortable about how this anchor point fits with respect to how they're going to have to move their head. So, back to the short axle to axle, which is what I shoot. We're going to sit in that position, and the head's going to have to go forward so that the string fits where I want it to fit. So, we're just making the point to start with that, as I ran into quite recently, an idea that depending on the axle to axle, you were going to alter the draw length. Not the case. So what is going to define the draw length? What's going to define the draw length is if we draw the bow a little bit further away from ourselves, if we line up this front hand, the hand holding the release aid, and the rear elbow into a line, we see where this hand sits. Now obviously this bow is set for me. It's going to drop into exactly the position I want. There's no excessive movement of the head. This position is right. So if I just grab this Ultra Elite again, which is set up probably about half an inch longer, and just show you what happens with this hand position. So, nice simple test, and you can see where this hand's sitting. If I was to move this in, this anchor point has to be further back, and I don't want the anchor point further back there for me. So, what I want to show you as well is this line that's going to drive, which is the most important part of the shot. So, the front hand on the grip, the rear hand and the rear elbow are in line. My head is going to go into a position, my head I can move around all I want. I don't want this elbow out of line. See a lot of people shooting with the elbow too far around. If they do that, they're going to need an arm guard. They tend to smash into their arm and it's not stable. So, first things first is this draw, put these in line, there's the hand, drop it in, see if it's too far forward, too far back. Second point is, with respect to the axle to axle, how much you're going to have to move your head forward. And let me be very clear about this, because it was picked up in one of the earlier episodes that I did. I'm not talking about moving your head in this direction. I'm talking about nodding your head forward. So, we get a rough draw length. How do you fine tune it? First of all, if the draw length is too long, which is predominantly where people end up, when you come out full draw and set this dot or circle on your scope, you will fight all the time for the dot to stay in the middle of the target. It will drop out low. And you meet so many compound shooters who are convinced that they can't hold a dot, and it's because the draw length's too long. In physical terms, it's because there isn't this tie-up between these three articles, and so they're using their body to try and hold it up and generally losing something on the grip. If you make the draw length too short, you can always shoot with a short draw length. That's fine. Too short, and this dot's going to bob around. You can never make it sit still. But again, you can shoot with too short a draw length. So just to recap, the first and most important thing, you want a position where away from your face, with everything that we've talked about in posture and the hand position, this just drops in to where you are. And you can get a coach to help you with that, and that's fine. After that, it's about what the sight does. Too long, you will be forever fighting it up, dropping out the gold. Too short, it's going to bob around. The final thing that I am going to talk about, and we may come back to it at a later date, is knot loop length. I'm only going to mention this now because people believe you can alter the draw length on the knot loop. This is not true. The draw length is there's 3 positions. If you make the knot loop longer, you're not going to alter the actual physical draw length, which is where this bow sits. You're going to alter where your rear elbow sits. Again, a decent rule of thumb. Long knot loops, it's not going to be right. It's going to put you a long way back, it's going to turn you around out of line. A simple concept for a decent position to start is if you take the 3rd finger on your hand and put it into the knot loop, it should basically go through to about 1st joint. That's a very rough guide, but it works juniors and girls with little fingers, and guys, you'll be able to get a feeling for where to start. After that, you alter the knot loop to just tighten up this rear elbow so it doesn't feel that it floats about. So I hope that's given you some insight into how to set the draw length up on a compound.